beyond the 50K mark, ultras turn into a whole new ballgame where crew, pacers, and drop bags play a big time role in the success of your race and just overall comfort and mindset. Just knowing that if you got the ultra crew and an ultra pacer and your ultra drop bag set up correctly and everybody's on the same page, it's going to save you so much mental anguish that you're going to have that much more energy to complete the race successfully. So, if you're new to the group, I want to say welcome. My name is Eric, and I am a USCA Ultra Running Certified Coach. I love talking about running. I love running and helping other runners like you become better runners. So, um, every Tuesday, I go live in the group and share on a topic of interest like this. And from time to time, I invite a special guest into the group that we get to learn from or get motivated from, share mindset, nutrition, just the elites and the top people in this sport. So next week we actually have Mike McKnight coming on, but he is also known as the low carb runner, and he's going to be sharing on his low carb approach to running, where he's actually run 100 miles consuming 0 calories. So he has a totally different approach on nutrition and how our bodies work. So make sure you guys join next week. And then following up to that, the very following week, we have Bronco Billy himself, Jeff Browning. If you guys don't know who Jeff Browning is, look him up on YouTube or Instagram. He's all over the place out there, just one of the best in the sport. He's completed over 50 100-mile races, and I think he's won like 30 of them. So he's going to be an awesome treat to have in the group. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, watching the replay, and you want to join My Endurance Life, go to myendurancelife.com and click on the blue button that says join the group, and you'll get invited to join the Facebook group so you guys can join our live training calls that we have every week and also interact with our guests. With that being said, let's get into the training. Okay, like I said, the first recognized, you know, anything, well, typically, I mean, realistically, anything over a marathon is considered an ultra distance. So it can be, 27 miles. It can be, they got races up to 300 miles or more now. So anything longer than a marathon is considered an ultra. 50K is like the first recognized distance that is officially an ultra marathon. Typically on trail, but there are some road races that do this, like the 24-hour formats and stuff like that. They are rolled ultra marathons, but typically they are done on trail. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight is trail ultra marathons, and specifically beyond the 50K, 50 miler, 100K, 100 mile, and how crew, pacers, and drop bags play a giant, giant role in not only the success of our race, but how we just like the mental well-being that goes with it, just knowing that we got a solid crew, solid pacers, and our drop bags have everything that we need for it. So first I'll go in that order too. And then I'm gonna go last. I'll end with drop bags, but I got two types of drop bags that I recommend. One that is a disposable kind that you're not going to get back, and then two is one that you want to keep with you. And I'll explain why each bag has its own pros and cons, and why you might want to use either one at the end. It's super important. So especially if like 50 mile or 100K, those bags, the two different types play big roles. Okay, but number one, let's start with crews. Your crew is typically made up of friends or family members, other runners that you know that are there to support you. And lots of times, crews and pacers get mixed up, like they play double roles, and that's fine. That's how I do it too. We're not out there, we're not the pros or the elites who have like people designated just to pace and people designated just to crew. But I do recommend that if you can, have one person that's just in charge of your crew chief, and typically not a pacer because especially as the distances get longer, especially the 100 mile, 100K, 100 mile range, that crew chief becomes super, super important because they are they have a lot of responsibility, and most of the time they're up as long as the runner. So if they plan on pacing, it's just going to be an added task that, might not play out as well towards the end of the race had they just been focused on one thing. And what I mean by that is your crew chief is in charge of not only all the people that's part of your crew and your pacers, but is also um, up to date on your estimated time of arrival to every aid station, to every crewable aid station. And so the way 50 milers and 100Ks and 100 miles are laid out is that they'll have different aid stations. Some aid stations are crew accessible, where they can come and help you and assist you, and other aid stations along the way are just too remote or too hard to get to that they don't allow crew there. And so it'll just be the volunteers aiding you. But at each crewed aid station, it's your job as the runner to give ETAs of when you're going to get there, so that you have to go through your course profile, take a look and guess, like, with the elevation change, knowing, okay, I'm going to be moving this fast. It's going to take me about this long to get there. And what I like to do is I print out a chart and a map of the course, and I lay out, like, with Google drop links for my crew chief, which is my wife. So she knows how to get to, if this is a loop race, this doesn't apply, but for typical like loop, um, like big loop races in out and backs, there will be scheduled crewed aid station. And so I'll give her like a Google Maps like pin drop to each location so she knows exactly how to get there. If we get there a day ahead of the race, which we'd like to do for the longer races, then we will actually drive and find our way in and out so we know where all those crewed aid stations are. Just makes less stress on race day for her and for me, not having to worry about if they're going to get lost on the way. Because that's the last thing you would want to do is like be relying on them and they're not there, right? So that's why I give like if everything's going super good, this is the earliest I'm going to be there. If everything just hits the fan, I might be this late, and then from there we adjust each um, distance in each crewed aid station time arrival, depending on how I'm moving, or depending on how you're moving. But the crew chief is in charge of knowing how to get to the aid stations, and based on the time of the race, what the runner's going to want. So early in the race, you might be eating different stuff. You might be taking more solid foods, and different kinds of liquids. And then as the race progresses, it's up to your crew chief to realize how just they need to know you well, and be able to read you as you're coming in so they can change up the game plan if they can tell like right away, like, oh man, they're really not feeling good. Like, let's go with plan B on their nutrition. And then if plan B doesn't work, let's go with plan C. So that's your job to let them know what each plan is prior to the race. The more you communicate, the easier it is on everybody because, we get hangry. Especially if you're running a 100 mile or 100K and the sun goes down. Lots of times, like soup has bailed me out and got me going back again. So it's up to your crew chief to know this, like, okay, when the sun goes down and it starts getting cold, they might want soup or they might want this. And they're also in charge of your pacers too, letting them know, okay, it's your job to get him from this point to this point. And so on and so forth. And then your crew chief really doesn't assist you when you come in. They can do a little bit, especially if you have a small crew, but they are more in charge of like directing. And so your pacers, especially if you have a small crew, start playing like the small parts, within that, like filling water bottles and checking your vest or your pack or your pockets for trash and replenishing your vest with whatever nutrition products you use and stuff like that. So everybody has their own role, and it's up to your crew chief to designate those roles based on how you're doing. Like, so and so, you grab the water bottles and refill them. so and so, you check his pants for trash and throw trash away. And then the crew chief says, I'm going to be doing this, this, and this. And then depending on the length of the race, if especially if it's wet, like if you're going to do a gear change or a shoe change or a sock change, um, everything should be written out in a folder or a notepad so they know at mile 62, he's going to want to change his shoes. Or at mile 30, it's raining today. Let's make sure that they're not chafing and see if they need to reapply lube. Stuff like that. That's everything that your crew and your crew chief needs to be thinking of and being prepared of as you come into it. Okay, now pacers. Pacers. Number one rule about pacers is that you have to trust them. Have to trust them 100% that not only can they do the distance or the um, elevation profile that they are going to be running with you with. So if they have a 10-mile section with 3,000 foot of gain, make sure that they can run hills. The last thing you want to do is take somebody who just ran a 10K and that's all they're capable of and put them into a 10-mile hilly section because they're not going to be able to do it. And the last thing we want to do as racers is have to worry about our pacers because it is a mental drag if you're worrying about your pacer and then being able to keep up with you. Um, so not only that, not only do they have to be physically fit enough to do their section, because during an ultra, the sections can be like 6 miles to 20 miles sometimes in between aid stations or in between crewed aid stations. The longest section I've ever ran without a crew is 24 miles. So 24 miles with no crew or personal support to get you there. So they had one aid station in between and one water drop. So it's just because that race was so inaccessible for vehicles to get to that we couldn't. So that section I had to make sure that on the way back, the pacer had to be able to do 24 miles. So just that's food for thought. The second thing your pacer is responsible for is knowing you and knowing how you want to be talked to in different situations. And keeping up on your nutrition, if you're eating, if you're drinking, just little reminders of how you want to be reminded. So the more you communicate with your pacer prior to the race, the better. I mean, tell them like, at this leg of the race, when you join me, like, man, I might be super tired. I might be super cranky. I might be trying to find every excuse in the book to quit. Don't let me. And that you just go tell them that and tell them like, I might be even making stuff up that's really not real because I'm so tired and delusional that you got to keep me focused. So you got to trust your pacer, especially if you're running at night, and find out just if you can go on runs prior to that based on the time of day that they're going to be pacing you, especially if it's at night. Find out if you want to follow them or if you want them to follow you and just talk to you from behind. Um, my son paced me uh, over the summer, and it was just an awesome thing having him pace me. But I told him he'd join me in the middle of the night, and the cool thing about that was just one, we have the father-son relationship, but I was super tired. I think he paced me from like 10 o'clock to maybe 1 in the morning or something like that. And I was so tired at this point that I had to tell him like, please keep talking to me. I'm enjoying it, but I'm too tired to talk back. So stuff like that you can communicate to your pacer, just because just having him there talking to me was motivating me and keeping me going. And at that point, I liked following him. He was pulling me along. Later in the race, when my cousin joined me, and we were running, I wanted to be in front. I wanted to set the pace because I got a second win or third win or maybe an eighth win by this time. And I wanted to run. I wanted to set the pace and just have her behind me and just kind of like keeping track of course markers along the way, making sure we weren't getting lost. So just pacers play a big role in that. And just knowing where, if you want to be pushed or if you want to be pulled. Sometimes it's fun to be pulled because they can set the pace for you when you're tired, and just tell them like keep going until you drop me. If you drop me, slow down a little bit. Um, and so just their strategy behind pacers, and the more you do it, the easier it's gonna get. Um, okay. Oh, the one rule about pacers though is they're not allowed to be like your mule. They're not allowed to carry stuff for you. Different races, different race directors kind of turn a blind eye to this, but if it's one of the like if it's a super big race where they have a course officials and stuff like that, they might report it and get you disqualified. But chances are most people will turn a blind eye. I've had my pacers carry my pack for me sometimes, and they aided me that way. But technically, they're not supposed to. Just play however you want. Most of us are out there for fun. Most of us just want to finish, and the race directors know that. So lots of times, whatever it takes to get to the finish line. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Third thing is drop bags. Drop bags, if you don't know what a drop bag is, it is for uncrewed aid stations where you can put a bag there that has supplies that you think you might need or know you might need or are looking forward to. One of the tricks I like to do with my drop bags is, and this will all be available on the race director's website, that they'll know at mile so and so, drop back here, mile so and so, another drop back here. And so some races, depending on the distance, you can have 3 or 4 or more drop bags. And some races you might only need 1 or 2. There's 50 milers are typically, 1 or 2 drop bags. 100K, 100-mile, 3 or 4, depending on crew accessibility and if you have a crew. Also, if you don't have a crew, then you're going to be really, really relying on your drop bags. So drop bags have anything that you might need, from blister kits to nutrition to change of socks to even change of clothes if you know that the race is going to be particularly rainy or wet or stuff like that. I've even seen people put change of shoes in their drop bags, knowing at this point of the race, I'm going to want to change my shoes because the course changes a little bit. We go from less hilly to road. And so I saw a guy change his shoes on the last 50 miler I did, knowing that we were pretty much done climbing. It was all downhill, and he wanted different shoes to run the last like 8 miles back down to the finish line. So smart move, I guess, if you're into that. But yeah. So different drop bags. So you have a drop bag that you want to get back, and this is the drop bag that I use that I want to get back, and I have 3 or 4 of these. And so you'll put your bib number on it. That was my bib number from the last time I did it. Don't know if you can see it, but then I'll also mark it with like some reflective tape. The more visible you can make your drop bags, the easier it is for not only you to find, but for the volunteers, because different races have different ways they like to do it. Some races allow you to go get your own drop bag, while others have it organized in a way that they organize it, and so they want to go get it for you. So if you have, say I put orange shiny tape on this, I say I have the blue drop bag with orange tape, and they'll be like, oh, I know right where that is, and it'll save them time and you time in the long run. So I also like to make this a dry bag in case it rains, so I can fold this down. I know that everything inside will stay dry. The second kind of drop bag that I like to use is disposable. And this is just a gallon Ziploc. And the reason I tape the sides and I tape it close is because this gets piled into the back of the truck or the car with the volunteers with everybody else's drop bags. So depending on where they put it, it could be at the very bottom with a ton of weight on it, and the sides could burst, and then everything inside you lose. And then you get to your aid station and be like, where's my drop bag? They're like, oh, is that the one that ripped? We're sorry. And then you're kind of screwed. So tape the side with duct tape. And then it's easy to find too. Some other racers use this, but if you use different color of duct tape and then you write your bib number on there, it's easy to find. And it's easy for the volunteers to find also. Why would you want to use that style of drop bag? Well, the number one reason I use it is if I know I'm going to finish well in front of the cutoffs and I don't want to wait at the finish line for them to wrap up their aid stations after the last runners come through and then bring it all the way back to the finish line for me to get. So that's one of the reasons why I like to use these is if I know or anticipate finishing well before the cutoff, well before the end of the race, and I just want to get my medal, maybe eat something, hang out for a little bit, and go home. I use these drop bags for my longer races where I know that I'm going to be hanging out no matter what. And chances are, by the time that, especially on the longer races, that I can't afford to wait to get back. I typically use the throwaway ones on 50 milers because I'm not going to be camping. I'm not going to be spending a night there. So I just want to get on the road or get back to uh, wherever I was staying. So um, that's a huge thing. Uh, things I like to put in my drop bags, like I said, is blister kits. But the one big thing that um, keeps me motivated and is kind of like a it'll help you along the way, I think too, is to put a treat inside your drop bags. That way, when I get to this aid station, I have something to look forward to. Um, just make sure it's the right type of treat. I did a race over the summer that it got to about 85 or 90 degrees during the hottest part of the day. And it was a 50-mile race. I was really looking forward to getting my drop bag about mile, I think it was 38 or 40 or something like that, because I had my favorite candy inside, a Reese's Pieces cup, or Reese's cup. But because it was so hot, it was in here in the sun, it was melted and I couldn't eat it. And it was a total bummer. So just keep in mind what you're putting in your drop bag too, especially lube. It's squirrel's nut butter. It can get so soft that if it's left in the sun, it becomes unusable. So if just think about the stuff you're putting in there if it can melt, because if it melts, if it's going to be a hot day out there, you're not going to be able to use it. And then on the hindsight of that too, if it's going to be super cold, if you're going to get to your drop bag in the middle of the night and the temperature drops, squirrel's nut butter is great, but it also gets super hard when it's frozen. So find different kinds of lubes, different kinds of treats, different kinds of whatever you put in there that isn't really going to change that much due to temperature. Especially in these drop bags, the enclosed watertight ones that they can really get hot in the sun. Um, Volunteers do their best to keep them in the shade, but sometimes they don't have a choice. So, um, and just to recap, like, crews, pacers, drop bags all play a super big role when it comes to just the success and mindset of running your ultra. The last thing we want to do is spend any more energy worrying about our crews or pacers or, our drop bags than we have to. Our brains use a ton of energy, ton of energy.